Warm welcome to everybody, and welcome to part two of the professional presentation. Now, in part two, what we're going to be going through is the open mandate. And the open mandate is really a conversation that's kind of like, think of it as a bit of a mislead, because I'm not talking about taking open mandates. What I'm doing is talking about educating the seller about open mandates, and once you've educated them kind of the weaknesses of an open mandate, you will find that they are actually going to start converting and saying, you know what, I agree with you. I'd actually prefer to go with the sole mandates. So this is all the drawbacks and all of these little bits and pieces that's going to help you through this particular process. So let's get into today. As I start with all my sessions, how to get the most out of this session? Well, it starts out with the acronym, the PCC. P is for participation. What I mean by participation, don't jump onto your phone, don't go into social media, don't have a look at emails or messages. Put all that aside and focus on the actual presentation itself. Do that with any workshop that you go through, to put that time to focus and participate into that particular session. So focus with your eyes, focus with your ears, and you're going to find you're going to get the greatest outcome. The second is curiosity. Asking those questions is so important for you to develop not only yourself inside, but it's going to give you that self-confidence when you walk and have conversations with your sellers. And the last, which is your commitment. In every session, there's always a golden nugget. And it's those golden nuggets that's going to help you to move forward in your business. You see, just sitting in a training session and learning and taking notes is one thing. But if you don't implement any of that into your business, it actually becomes a bit of a waste of time. So I want you to make sure that you do commitment. So remember to participate. We keep the session short and sweet and to the point. Curiosity, get those questions answered, and it's your commitments in moving forward. So let's get into the second part of the professional presentation, the open mandate. And there's an element that I want to share with you. This particular element is what I refer to as the tools needed. You see, for many of us, we just think that we've got the gift of the gab and we can talk our way into every sole mandate. Well, the problem with that is, as I mentioned in part one, when you just talk about just getting that sole mandate, you're going to end up with an overpriced sole mandate at a ridiculous time frame, and the commission, it's going to be questionable. So when we start talking about open mandates, there's a couple of tools to support your conversation. And I know that you're going to enjoy these tools because I've used them many, many times. And when I educate my sellers that say, but I want to use all the agents out there, I want to make sure that I get the greatest exposure. I want. And I then start saying 100%, and I appreciate it. And I'll start bringing out these tools and I'll start explaining them. At the end of the discussion, they look at me and they go, okay, Stuart, I can understand exactly why I need to go with a sole mandate with yourself. So what are these particular tools? Well, there's 5 of them that I'm going to discuss with you. The first one, it's the code of conduct. You need to make sure that you have downloaded a copy of the code of conduct, and we're going to cover that just now. The open mandate, of course, you need to have that copy with you so that you can have that particular discussion. 3, and this is where it becomes a little bit fun because you're going to see a lot of this happening at the moment, multiple for sale boards. And I'll share that with you a little bit later as well. The 4th one is the property comparisons. And again, I love this particular one as well because I start picking out the flaws, especially when that particular seller said, but I'm going with this real estate company. I actually pick out flaws in their work that they do. Without me actually saying it, they see it. And the last one, and this one here is one that you can actually Google, and I will talk about it, is the Supreme Court of Appeal. And I'll talk a little bit later about that Supreme Court of Appeal because this can really scare your sellers. And I'll give you the example that we have with that. So let's have a look at the very first tool that I'm speaking about. And it's from the PPRA, and it's the Code of Conduct. So what I definitely recommend you do is go onto their website. You can Google it. There's so many platforms that actually have it available. Make sure that you are downloading that code of conduct It's a couple of pages. Make sure that you download that and actually have it laminated and have it bound so that when you're going out to your appointments, you're not sitting there with papers and sometimes they can look a little bit ruffled. If you get them bound and make it into the code of conduct, this you can take around with you all the time. Now, I always carry one in my bag when I go out to clients, and there's a reason why I do that. You see, so many times I have a seller that'll say to me, I'm not signing anything. I just want you to bring me a buyer. Just bring me a buyer. Now, that's falling into the category of an open mandate because he's not giving you any form of exclusivity. I then say, oh, thank you, Mr. Seller. And I'll pull out my code of conduct. I go into my code of conduct. I flip over to clause number 3 that refers to mandates. And in clause 3.1, there is a section that I then read out to him. And I actually say, unless he or she has been given a mandate to do so. So when you look at clause 3.1 of our code of conduct, it actually stipulates that we need the authority to market their particular property. So this overcomes that first barrier where they don't want to sign anything or give you any form of authority. They just want to say, verbally, go ahead. Now, Mr. Seller, that falls into litigation because you said something, I've heard something, I've said something, you've heard something, but they don't match each other. That's called litigation. And that becomes rather expensive. And at the end of the day, you as the agent are going to lose out because it's their home. So when they say they don't want to sign anything, they don't want to work with anything like that, bring out the actual code of conduct, flip over to clause 3, 3.1, and actually get them to read it. And just say, look, Mr. Seller, we run with the code of conduct. Because I'm a professional, please just have a look at this. And then what you'll find is this is actually, it's got the logo from the PPRA, previous one was EAB, but it's got that logo on there. And this is what I follow. I'm following the laws. I'm being a professional. Just like a doctor, a lawyer, an accountant, they have all got a code of conduct that they operate and they work by. This is my code of conduct and this is what I work. So this is the first tool that you actually have. And this particular tool is a brilliant one because this elevates you to be recognized as a professional because you're following a code of conduct and you actually have it with you that you can stipulate and go through it. So first tool, code of conduct, straightforward and simple. Make sure that you download it, you print it, have it laminated, have it bound, and then take that around with you at every single one of your appointments. What I've actually done on my personal one is when I printed it, I took a yellow highlighter and there's certain sections within the code of conduct that I've actually highlighted so that it jumps right out of the page. So when I know that I need to talk to them about mandates, I can actually flip to that page. It's highlighted in yellow. And I actually say to my seller, would you mind just having a look at that? They read it and they go, ah, okay. So it is a requirement. It's not just you being a tough agent. So that's something, the first thing that you can actually go out there. So make sure you've got that code of conduct. The second tool, and this is where it starts to become interesting, because the second tool is to have a copy of an open mandate. Have that with you and put it on the actual desk. Why? Because you're not saying, I'm not going to take an open mandate. I've got the open mandate in front of me. I am prepared and I have it ready. And when you're having that discussion, you put it out in front of your particular seller. You say to them, there it is, the open mandate's there. And they get quite excited because they feel that they're in charge. And then you start talking. What you start doing is you say to them, by the way, with an open mandate, you do understand that it's going to give you access to multiple agencies. And that's what the seller wants to hear. They want to hear that there's so many agents working on their property and they start feeling great and they start feeling excited. Now, this is actually, for those of you watching this is actually a psychological sales trick. Because ultimately what we're doing is we're starting by giving them what they want, where they feel heightened, they actually are accepting it, they feel like they're winning, and then you turn around and say, that's perfect. But did you know, in order for an open mandate, You, the seller, have to be in control. And they're going to say, yes, but I want to be in control. And I'll say, that's great. So let's talk about what you need to be in control of. Well, number one, you need to be in control of all the different commissions for all the different agencies, because some agencies might be a fixed fee, some agencies might be flexible, some agencies might be very rigid with their commissions, which means you need to maintain and manage commission structures for all these different agencies. Now, you can try and stipulate, but there are certain agencies out there that are very rigid with their commission structures. So, Mr. Seller, the first thing that you've got to do is you've got to now negotiate with, if you want to work with 10 different agencies, you've got to negotiate that commission with 10 different agencies, because we got to get that mandate right up front. That's why the first tool of the mandate, we discuss it in sequence. The second, well, you need to monitor the prices on all the property portals. You see, what happens when your property is listed 5 or 6 or 10, 12 times with different agencies, what's ultimately going to happen is if it's listed for 2 million, it happens all the time. There's going to be one agent that goes, I need to get that greater exposure. I've been grouped on the actual portals. I want to make mine 5,000 Rand cheaper. I'm sure the seller will be happy. It's only 5,000 Rand. It's not a lot of money. And they go cheaper. The next agent then suddenly goes, oh, so they're at 1,995. Let me make it at 1,990 because I want to have it. And what happens is the agents start taking control of the price without talking to you, which means before you blink, your property is listed at 1.8 million, but you wanted 1.9 as a minimum. So it's actually listed below, and agents forget to communicate with yourself. So, Mr. Seller, you have to every day almost monitor your listing to make sure that it's priced right and that they're not discounting on anything like that. The third is you've got to deal with many agents and their appointment structures. You see, certain agents will go, I'm going to give you a call when I have a buyer. And others will say, hey, we'll set it up for every Wednesday at 5 o'clock. It's going to be sporadic and it's going to be all over the place. And you're also going to lose control of who's coming through at what time. Are you familiar with all those agents coming into your house? Some of them might even be assistants of that particular agent, or it might be a partnership of person that you don't even know from that agent. So you're going to be dealing with all these appointments with a variety of people. Are you comfortable to have people that you don't know coming through your property? So you can see how all of these little elements of an open mandate starts coming together. Now, the fourth one, double commission. You see, Mr. Seller, if in the event two agencies bring the same buyer through that property, you could fall into the condition of double commission. Now, I will explain because that's the Supreme Court of Appeal, and I'll go into a little bit more detail. But what you do is you actually are just telling them that with an open mandate, you do stand a chance of a double commission. And you'll have that Supreme Court documents where you can actually support all that. And the fifth one, you've got to control the conditions of all these different mandates. So you've got all these different documentations coming through. Now, Mr. Seller, you're a busy person. Your business is not to sell properties. My business is to sell properties. And this, when you go through all these different elements with your seller, this is how you close. You see, Mr. Seller, what I would do for you is you only have to negotiate the commission once with me, and I will relay that commission structure to all those agencies because I do work with them. So you're still going to have that exposure, but you only have to negotiate once on the commission. When we're monitoring the prices, I will do that. I will make sure that if they're allowed to share it on any of the portals under the instructions from myself, I will make sure that it is listed at the correct price. You'll also, when it comes to appointments, you'll only have to deal with me. If agents want to make appointments, they will come to me. I will be present at every single one of those viewings. I will be at that property and I will make sure that they come through and give you the feedback thereafter. I will also make sure that you don't fall into that trap of double commission. So when a buyer comes through, I will make sure that it is with the same agency and that that buyer hasn't moved to a different agency opening up the chance that you're going to be paying double commission. And also, it's only one mandate. It's one set of documents. You sign that, you deal it with myself, and that's how we go forward. So this is when you start talking about the open mandate. Here are some 5 key little elements that I thought I'd share with you. And trust me, when you have this conversation with your sellers, they look at you and they go, wow, okay, so you will do all of that. And you can start having that open mandate converted into a sole mandate. And generally, it's exclusive to you. Now, the third tool that I want to share with you is the multiple for sale boards. And the multiple for sale boards, this is actually quite fun. Now, I have my own picture. This one I've just taken off the actual internet from a UK site so that I'm not interfering. So if there is anybody that's from the UK and you're seeing your boards here, I do humbly apologize. But in South Africa, I've kept out all our local brands. So I do have my own photo that I've taken. So I want you to drive the neighborhood, go and have a look at a property that's got 3, 4, 5 boards outside and take a picture of that. Blow it up, get it printed, have it laminated, and have that with you, and you put it in front of your actual seller. Why? Well, Mr. Seller, when you do an open mandate, one of the key elements is a for sale board. Now, you could end up with what looks like this outside your property. Now, when you've got multiple for sale boards outside your house, one, it actually detracts from the look and the feel of your property. It actually starts to look a little bit messy. It's much better just to have one for sale board, and that will be clean and it will be located in the position that we would actually negotiate on. Now, when we look at these multiple for sale boards, this is what it can actually lead to. The first, it can actually show desperation. And I'm sure you've driven past a property and you suddenly see 4, 5 for sale boards outside the property. There's always one that's kind of hanging to the side because it's been weathered, but it gives that property the form of it's a desperate sale. They really desperately need to sell that property. And when a property is desperate, ultimately, it's going to start to invite those unqualified drive-by buyers. Hey, here's an opportunity. These people will probably take that ridiculously low offer. Or, hey, the property's for sale. Let me just go in and see and have a look at the property. And those are unqualified. You've got no control over it. It also, as I mentioned, it can reduce that curb appeal to the actual buyers, especially if it's in a nice affluent area or it's a property that is really well maintained. All these for sale boards outside, you drive up, it actually has a dirty look to it. So it reduces that curb appeal. And we know it takes 45 seconds for a buyer to fall in love with a property. And if they suddenly go, ooh, look at those for sale boards, and they're all at different angles and different colors and hanging to the side, it just gives a negative look to the actual property. And again, it opens up for double commission. And you'll see that open mandates, I bring that up so many times, double commission, double commission, double commission, because a seller wants to get their property sold at the best possible price, but double commission must be sitting on the back of their mind. And that's what you want to get to eradicate the possibility that there will never be double commission, not with a single agent. So making sure that you start talking about this double commission. That's why we'll be ending on that Supreme Court of Appeal. The fourth tool, and this is the tool that I mentioned earlier, whereby you don't want to say anything negative about your opposition because that's really not in your culture. But what you want to do is you want to highlight the lack of professionalism. And you want to make sure that you're at this highest level. Now, Mr. Seller, if you go into an open mandate, you're going to have your listings listed with a variety of agencies, and they're going to be put into the portal. And you need to monitor it. Why? Well, this is why you're going to have it. You go onto the actual portal, and what I'm sharing with you now is the exact forms that I actually have in mine. And each one of these are laminated, they're bound, and I can flip through them. So I actually print out. Now, because this is on a public portal, you can print and you can present. There's nothing hidden. And I take 3 of these properties. So I take 3 that are the exact same property. So here I've picked property 24. I look for the ones that are grouped, And ultimately what I'm looking for is I want to make sure that the first images look the same so that we can see that they're the same properties. Now, you don't have to hide which agencies they're with because it's on the public portal. They will find it out anyway. But what I do, and if you look at all three of these, I then say to them, but have a look at this. Each of them has a different price. So, Mr. Seller, the first thing that's happening is agents are discounting your property without your authority. Because if they were getting the authority, all three would be at the exact same price. They would be in control. So here we have them, and I printed them at the exact same time. You can see there's time and date stamps at the bottom of each of these documents, but you can see that each have a different price. So that's the first thing. The second thing, and this was actually out of absolute coincidence that I found this particular property, but it does happen, is when we start looking at the features. So these actually one has two bathrooms, and the other one, two garages, and one garage. They can actually be different as far as the number of bedrooms, the number of bathrooms. And Mr. Seller, if we are not marketing your property exactly to its specifications, and a buyer comes through and we've by accident made it a 5-bedroom when in fact it's a 4-bedroom, that can give a negative feel. And you don't want any negativity to have on that particular listing. So you can actually go out, and it's quite fun, print out these. You can keep them with you. In other words, you don't have to update them. I've actually had these printed. This was back in 2019. You'll see the format is the old format of Property 24. You can actually print them out, have them laminated, put them together, and you actually can present them in front just to highlight what can happen when you've got multiple agencies. And this is why you've got to work on it, because ultimately the agent could make errors and the agent could discount your property. I even go further and I say to them, please just read the descriptions. What do you think? And many of the times, 2 of the descriptions have got spelling errors, grammar errors, and the seller is just shaking their head like you cannot believe. So that's the 4th tool that I wanted to share with you, is to print out 3 of the actual properties, and one could be yours if you want, and you can highlight your perfection on a particular listing if you really want to do that, or you can print 3 random ones and you just highlight the differences on prices. Do a little bit of homework, but you will find the listings, and they could be anywhere in the country. So there's plenty of listings that you can actually work with. The 5th tool, and this is the tool that really hits us with the actual double commission. And this was an actual court case that happened in Mount Edgecombe in KZN, and it actually went. So you can Google Wakefield's real estate versus a tree, ATTREE, Wakefield's versus a tree. And this is the actual court case that will really put everything into practice, because what we know is when a case study has already gone through a court case whereby a seller has paid double commission, what we'll actually find is any other case, they will use that as a study. They will pull that into the court. The judge will have a look at that and say, as per Wakefield versus a tree, they paid out because of these conditions. Your case is the same. Seller, bang, paid. Done. And remember, if it comes from the actual courts, it is legit. So there is the actual Supreme Court of Appeal, the actual appointments and the journal entries that you can actually see everything. And all this is available on the actual internet that you can download. So I had downloaded this. Again, I laminated. There's 2 versions. There's a shortened version, and then there's the full case version. So that is actually a copy of that. In the actual clause, in that particular document, here's the order from the actual judge himself, and I'm going to highlight it. The plaintiff, the sum of 232,000 rand that they had to pay. You see, when that seller had that particular property, they were hoping to sell their property and make some profit. They went through this particular court case, and they had to then double commission. They had to pay double commission because of the error. So what exactly happened? And I'm going to give you the scenario in a roundabout method so that you can understand that. What actually happened is Wakefield's had the actual listing first. They took a buyer through the property. The buyer looked at the property and they said, at this particular stage, we can't afford the price. I think it was at 3.2 million. They wanted to put an offer at 2.9 million, and the seller had rejected that particular offer. So from Wakefield's eyes, that deal went dead. But Wakefield's continued the communication with that seller as per the effective cause. What happened was 2-3 months later, the same buyer saw that the property had been relisted with a different agency and it was on the market for 2.9 million. They said, fantastic, that's the price that we're happy with. They went back with a different agency and they put in their particular offer. They put the offer of 2.9 million. It was accepted. Wakefield's had been in communication the whole time. The buyers basically said, hey, we actually have put an offer on the property. Wakefield's took it up, and there's the actual court case. You see, it was two different agencies that took the same buyer through that property. Wakefield's took the offer that was rejected by the seller. The second agency took the offer. It was accepted and it was at the same price. So this takes it to that extreme level whereby the seller should have accepted the offer in the first case. They wouldn't have to pay the double commission. So read through the actual case study, be aware of it. And there's a number of scenarios that can actually build around that, which can actually prevent our sellers from falling into the trap, because we know our buyers aren't loyal. They will jump to wherever that listing is. So just bearing in mind, this is a very, very severe case, and double commission happens. So have this on hand because you can use it with you. And then you have this final script that you can use once you've gone through everything and explained double commission, explained the quality. That's why, Mr. Seller, I don't work with open mandates. You see, my conscience cannot put you at risk. This particular script I've used so many times that actually becomes quite a nice way for that seller to go, wow, so you're actually looking after me. I really do like that. And that is the first step of getting a sole mandate, because as a sole mandate, you will be looking after your seller and taking them through that particular journey. Now, for our next session, we're going to be talking about the one, the only commission. We're going to dig into commission in a unique way to help you to have this conversation. And I do it in a very different approach. There are a lot of scripts out there that can rebuttal all of the commission arguments. But what I do is I took a different approach. I took the approach of a business, and I actually went an approach that is very unique. And that's what I'll be sharing in part 3 of the professional presentation.